Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. The USC Family Caregiver Support Center is pleased to provide this educational video for families and relatives who are taking care of one or more loved ones. This virtual event is part of our ongoing caregiver discussion series that explores how our life experiences shape us as caregivers. Today's discussion will be around the family caregiving experience through the eyes of immigrant family caregivers. Either the family caregiver themselves, are immigrants, or they are caring for someone who is an immigrant. I'm Jenny Peterson, and I'll be your host for today's program. Now, before we begin, I want to take a quick moment to introduce you to our center. The USC Family Caregiver Support Center serves and supports family caregivers as they navigate through their caregiving journey. The center provides services such as information and referral, support groups, evidence-based trainings, community education, and much, much more to family caregivers seeking help. If you are a family caregiver who is struggling or needs support, our center can help. Our center is also home to the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center, which is part of the California statewide system of 11 caregiver resource centers. Now, if you happened upon this video by chance and you don't know about our center yet, please visit our website at losangelescrc.usc.edu for more information. Better yet, you can even sign up for our program right on our website through the CareNav link on our homepage. We know that family caregivers need support, and like I said earlier, our center is here for you. Now, let's get this show going. We've invited 3 family caregivers here today to give us some insight into the immigrant family caregiver experience. This discussion will allow caregivers listening to or watching this video, caregivers out there, to relate to and learn about others' triumphs and struggles when providing care for a loved one. And these 3 caregivers who are joining us today, they will provide some insight into their life experiences and family roles and how those shape their caregiving decisions and color their perspectives. Being an immigrant family caregiver creates unique circumstances that are specific to the community. Giselle Silva, who is a family care navigator at the USC Family Caregiver Support Center, will be our moderator for today's panel. Welcome, Giselle. Take it away.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Giselle Silva. I am one of the family care navigators at the USC Family Caregiver Support Center, and I will be moderating our caregiver discussion panel today. We've invited some special caregiver guests today to discuss their unique caregiving experiences, our immigrant family caregivers. You will be able to listen to their stories and how they've been able to navigate this part of their caregiving journey. We hope that these caregiver discussions spark hope in our audience that there are others out there who are dealing with a similar caregiving issues. I want to thank our guests for being here today. We have Allison, Arpa, and Eva. Allison, can you tell us about who you care or cared for and when you had that aha moment that you are a caregiver?
I'm Allison, and I care for my almost 98-year-old grandmother and have for quite a few years now. I don't think caregiver came into play in my head, I think, until about 2 years ago, I would say, when I realized that I was no longer just her granddaughter, but also her caregiver. And I still think that I'm out to lunch on that, but just because it's personal and it is so separate or whatever. But yes, I would say about 2 years ago.
2 years.
And more so
okay.
in the last 6 to 8 months.
Okay. So that's you believe that that's around this time now that you're adjusting to that role of caregiver, not just
Yes.
granddaughter.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
completely.
Okay. Well, thank you, Allison. Arpa,
Yeah.
can you tell us who you care for or who you've cared for? And when was your aha moment that you realized you're a caregiver?
It was in 2011 when my parents and I came to United States. My dad got sick. He had lots of health issues, and during those, it was in 2011 or in 2012 that I thought, if I'm not going to care for them because I felt I can be a connector between understanding my parents and helping the doctors or nurses to understand what's going on with them, not only the health, but also taking care of the life, how my parents and I are going to live in the United States.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as when you started this journey and having to figure out, right, what this journey is going to look like as a caregiver, did you ever stop and think, okay, I know what am I going to do? How am I going to get the resources? What led you to explore the journey?
Mm-hmm. Maybe the resources that I was coming to my mind was to contact the doctors. I mean,
Okay,
having a source as a doctor.
that's, that's a good start. Definitely a
Yeah.
good start is always the doctor. Thank you, Arpa. Eva, can you tell us when your aha moment as a caregiver came
Uh,
about?
Hi, this is Eva, and I am taking care of my husband for about 10 years and more. The aha moment that I had was in 2010. That it's a lighter, but it like it goes up to a higher level, and
Okay.
that when he really had this horrible disease, the Alzheimer's, then that really make it uh, complete or really make it a full circle, like make it a big aha moment.
Mm, okay.
7 years ago,
7 years ago.
the
So
first
what will
aha
you
I felt
say?
like, sorry,
Okay. That was your big no, go ahead. Oh, that was your biggest
no,
aha moment. Was it?
yeah, the biggest was in 2015. I said,
Okay.
this is it. I'm stuck.
Hmm.
That's it.
Stuck. What
Mhm.
made you say that? What made you say you're stuck?
I'm stuck to be a caregiver for my husband. It's because it's not only the chronic disease that he had, but
Mhm.
all other um, ailments, medical
Mhm.
health issues.
Okay.
And with this coming over here in the Philippines, I am in the US from the Philippines. So that's really a huge difference, a huge challenge for me.
Okay. So from 2010 to 2015, were you already utilizing any resources, or were you just caregiving for what you knew what to do?
I was caregiving for what I knew.
What you knew.
There's no
Okay.
such resources from
Okay.
2010 to 2015. In
Okay.
2015, we migrated to the US, and then
Okay.
starts everything, all the changes, all the challenge.
Okay. So, a question I will like to ask all of you as immigrant caregivers. What would you say was the most challenging factor as an immigrant caregiver? Allison, can you maybe share a little bit of what your are and what challenges you face as an immigrant caregiver?
My grandmother she's immigrated from Scotland to Canada and then into the United States. I would
Okay.
say it's probably the least, um, on the totem pole of things that have been roadblocks in caregiving. But I could understand, the immeasurable challenges of trying to get resources, because I think even for someone that is from here or has been here for quite a while, she's a resident alien. She's, you know, um, that it would be even more complicated. And I can say,
Mhm.
from experience, even though I feel like her care has escalated in the last 2 years, I have lived and overseen her for the last decade. And while I'd like to think that, she sort of took herself to 96, which she did, there was an enormous
Okay.
amount of road work that I did from 90 to 96 that sort of helped things, transition. But without family and without certain resources and without knowing, you know, just that every single, caregiving situation is so wildly different from the next. Um, you know, Geriatrics as a whole, it's like, Eva's saying that she, started caring. That's an enormous a length of time. I would have no comparison or no bandwidth to be able to discuss that length of care and the kind of adjustments that her life and where she was at and all of the things that behind the scenes for her has to change. I mean, there's just so
Mhm.
many different aspects. But so I would, going back to what you were saying in regards to whether an immigrant caregiver, as an immigrant caregiver, if it's been harder, um, I just think it's been tough across the board. But so I couldn't
Okay.
speak entirely, to probably um, a lot of other things regarding immigrant caregiving.
Mhm.
But I certainly
Okay.
have a lot to say in regards to just,
The challenges. I mean, caregiving
just,
alone is a
yeah,
challenge.
exactly, just
Yeah,
the
Yes,
challenges alone. And
agree.
then on top of that, I just think that it would be measurable in some regards.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Allison. How about for you, Arpa? What have been some of the challenges as an immigrant caregiver, or just in general, maybe caring for, your loved one that, has, maybe migrated to the United States? And what are maybe some of the challenges that you faced?
The main challenge would be, and still it is, to be strong physically and mentally in order to be take care of parents, because mostly people immigrate for a better life, for better circumstances. When they face the challenges, it's a kind of shock. So at the same time, person must be strong in order to help them, in order to reach to a better life. So uh, main challenge was mental health,
Okay.
depression, anxiety for myself, and then I need to learn how to be a I don't know, good, um, understand people's psychology, as not in a professional way, but as a, like, as a gaining experience, because you need to how to talk with them, how to behave them, how to give them hope. At the same time, learn and understand. It's like gaining something and then giving them back. Uh, and that was the main reason because um, my other brothers later came to United States, so family get together, but there were other things going on in the family, so it was not only one issue, but there are other family issues. So the main thing was to be strong mentally and physically.
Well, it's very important that you mentioned that, Arpa. I think mental health is definitely a very important factor as we caregive because as it is, it's challenging and like exactly what you said, having to understand them, and at the same time, you have to validate your own self as well. And then I think for caregivers, we give so much of ourselves to our loved ones, and sometimes we hold back and validate what we feel, and we have all these feelings and emotions that are going through us, and we sometimes just kind of shove them to the side, or put them in the bookshelf and say, okay, I'll get to you, I'll get to myself once I'm done. And sometimes we forget that we're collecting dust on our emotions, and we get to a point where we're getting frustrated as well, and we don't understand why. And again, it's because we're not allowing ourselves to validate, right, what we're
Mhm.
feeling in the process. But you really touched a very important thing in mental health. Is absolutely the most important thing that we can think about as we caregive, because if we're well, then we can move forward in caring for our loved ones. And again, it's just the emotion itself will be reciprocated, right, from your loved one, because if we're happy, they'll be happy, or we get frustrated, they start getting frustrated. But so but thank you for touching on that, Arpa. That's very, very important when we caregive. How about for you, Eva? What are
For
some of
me,
the
the challenge,
Yeah, go ahead.
the challenges I had when I first came here was the culture, the weather, the language, uh,
Yes.
the availability of the resources. I mean, I was thinking, where can I go? Whom I can approach? Is there a Filipino community here? And I said culture and weather because when I arrived here, we were in a very cold state. There was snow, there was really rain, and it's very different from where I came from. So
Mhm.
it was a challenge. And then the culture. My husband is white and grew up in this westernized with their family. So there was a huge. I was shocked. I got sick and all of that. And I was
Mhm.
alone. I don't have any family or
Oh.
kind of relatives here. If I had,
Mhm.
they're kind of like away. There's like a wall. It's it's too far. Like
Yeah.
it was really a challenge that I could um, handle at that time. I cannot handle it.
And
Uh,
can you share a little bit of how you overcame that?
Um, it takes years for me. Yeah, it's not
Okay.
easy. Though I was really I did not lost hope. I was
Good.
always telling myself that you try, even if I feel intimidated and bullied because of my language. And I was really told that, oh, you speak differently.
Mhm.
If not, they're not going to tell me. But when they asked, what did you say? What's that? So I could feel it. I could read between the line what's going on.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then I reached out. One day I looked for a church where there are Filipinos. So I reached out. I got the courage to reach out.
Good.
People, community that could understand me. So I took that courage. On that very day, I said, okay, this is the first step. You reach out. I have to speak. I have to say, that's okay. That's okay. Even if I feel inside bad, but
Mhm.
that's the way I feel that I have to survive. I have my husband, his family, but I feel still different.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
later, I get used to it. I was able to adjust. And then, thankfully, we moved here in California, and the weather is not as bad, as shocking
Mhm.
that I had in the Northeast. I mean, snow. Can you
Yeah.
imagine? Mm-hmm.
Wow,
You
Eva,
came
that's a lot.
salty, yeah. And then we came here in the time of like going to winter. Oh my God.
Mhm. Well, that's a big shock. Yeah, you had the culture shock
Mm-hmm.
and the environment in itself, and then you still had your challenge of caregiving. So continuing that. So, wow, good
Correct.
way to overcome and not giving up. That's really good, Eva. Um,
Yes.
that's really good. So, my question to you all is, what is the biggest resource that made the biggest difference for you as a caregiver? And I'll start with you, Allison. You could take a moment and think about that, because sometimes we have to retrace back to, quite some time, maybe a few years or whatnot. What was a resource that allowed you to kind of move forward, kind of open the conversation from what Eva had mentioned. So I would like to know from each of you, what was a resource that really made a difference for you and opened up a lot of doors?
Um, I would. I did not think that I would, uh, qualify because I had worked in the entertainment industry, and I knew that uh, motion picture had a palliative care team, and I didn't think that my time in the industry was years and years ago, and I didn't think that I would qualify, or that or that it would be much of a resource or help. But what I realized is that just having, it's less resources, and it's like, it's not, yes, they have respite care, and they have different things that um, that some nonprofits do, et cetera, et cetera. But really, it was the
Mhm.
relationship between one of the LMFTs and the rabbis that has made the
Okay.
biggest difference. And really, it's just, and it's not because they have motion picture behind them, or because of all of what they're able to give me, because they've not given me anything other than the gift of time in themselves as adults. I think
Mhm.
that having adults outside of a family that is not on the same page in regards to her care, that apparently
Mhm.
all have a very different idea of where they want to be in their lives, and a very different idea as to um, what they see as her end of years, and what they it just it kind of I, I can't even explain, like, just having adults that absolutely were objective from outside, that had no reference of our family whatsoever, that just kind of jumped in and was able to um, just to be able to just to have their support, just to be able to, whether it's just an email or whatever, has been huge.
That's good.
Considering I feel like we have, little to no family in regards to this, or
So
we
you,
do, but
at that point, you felt
it was.
heard.
I felt heard, and I felt like I was, getting a lot of scary feedback, and it was not, it wasn't easy necessarily, and they're not my family, but I felt that I just felt like, even though there was a lot of, vulnerable stuff that was going on, there was stuff with, social worker. I mean, there was just a lot that they kind of were just sort of, all of a sudden, they don't know you and that you're a stranger, and they are on FaceTime with you because you're having an issue in Washington State with police officers and your grandma, and they're kind of having to jump in or whatever. And that's embarrassing, but I just felt so grateful that I had established that relationship before even traveling there. I mean, I think it was a 3-4 months in of a relationship, and it was just kind of everything. I mean, it's just, I think ARPA touched on it a little bit, but in saying that being physically strong mentally and physically is such a huge component mentally. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that she thinks about that, like the fact that, am I eating healthy? Am I exercise? Am I going to be able to physically, care for her? I have to, I'm moving her around physically. Like, I'm putting her in and out of baths and cars, and I'm breaking her falls. I'm falling down on the cement with her. Like, it's, there are, I mean, last year was harrowing. July of last year was harrowing based on just a single medication that she was on for a very, very temporary amount of time. And now she's on almost no medication, and there is no July anywhere around us like that. I mean, it was harrowing to the point where I felt that I was going to predecease her easily, that I would not wake up. And would there be a family? I mean, then what would happen? I mean, she'd end up at, who knows down the road. Like, it just, the worry of your own life and world and wanting to be physically strong. ARPA just touched on such a great point of just your mental health. Like, the mental of this is way more than than the labor of this for us in my particular case. And she's quite laborious and nowhere near another case. And maybe it doesn't even, it might pale in comparison to Eva's case from a labor standpoint. But the mental of it is so taxing and so exhausting and so worrisome that it's almost like I'm doing anything to counter the physical and the mental, so that I'm like physically, like, she deserves someone that can dance and move, that feels as good as her, so it's just, I mean, there are so many, people want to talk about, like, caregiving or ambulating or maybe like a walker or all of these things. Like, it's really the care. I think it's really just like the foundation of the care, of how strong all of that is, just sort of secondary, I feel, to making sure that we're as strong physically and mentally. Because I did not think I would survive the summer last year whatsoever. I mean, really bad. Really bad. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And, of course, caregiving is all of, like you mentioned, it's the physical aspect of it, but again, going back to what ARPA had mentioned earlier, was the mental. And I think when, as a caregiver, you can rest, right? Take a nice warm shower and lay in bed, and your body can relax. But when you're not mentally taking care of yourself, your mind doesn't rest. So then you don't sleep, and it's almost like a domino effect. One thing gets affected, and the other, and the other, and it goes back. But yes, it's definitely. And again, no one really talks about the mental aspect of caregiving. It's almost as, well, you can lift, and you can do this, and you can do that, but no one really asks, Allison, how are you feeling today? How was your day? Did you get to sleep today? Again, it goes back to being asked and being validated. So when you mentioned the red eye and being heard, I mean, that alone is helping your mental state at that point. and having someone to help you. But thank you for sharing that, Allison, and sharing what was a resource that opened that door, that avenue for you as
Mhm.
you go through your journey. And ARPA, can you share with us what was that one resource that opened up the doors for you?
There were many resources, but especially I'm Armenian from Iran, and then they are Armenian and also Persian community here. But they were I was listening to the radio or watching the TV that it can be helpful. Few of them were helpful, but they were for me it opened 2 years ago during the pandemic. It was very
Mhm.
interesting. Everybody was locked down, but somehow it works better for me because I don't know this. I don't know. Maybe this saying was very helpful that moment that less is more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mhm.
that was the time that I was thinking, oh, I don't know, maybe I was on a survival mode, something that uh, I thought, okay, I need to do something. And all these years, I weren't technically, I felt like I didn't done something meaningful for myself. And I thought, okay, it's the time to take an online class, do regular walking, like I don't know, for 1 year I took the online class for uh, from a community college, which is very helpful. Glenda Community College. It was medical assisting program, and then uh, I said, okay, I just move forward step by step, like a baby step. And next one was, okay, let's pass internship, and then it was like, like baby step. It was really like a baby steps. Even though right now I'm not doing the medical assisting thing, but I feel more fulfilled rather than when everything was available.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you took advantage of the pandemic in a way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that alone, right? That alone was a challenge for any caregiver, especially if you had a routine and maybe having to take your loved one outside or just take it into the store if you were able to. But again, there was so much fear, um, in almost insecurity, right? We weren't really secure of
Mhm.
what was happening out there.
Yeah.
So many uncertainties really of what, but the fact that you took that and say, well, let me see what can I do, and take advantage of this. So hey, that's a good way that, having those resources available to you. And everybody had to learn how to navigate the system one way or another, at least the online system, uh, whether it's support groups, whether it was telehealth, seeing your doctor over the camera or the telephone. I mean, just so many changes that we all had to adapt. But for you as caregivers, you're already pretty much used to adapting to the changes because every day,
Mhm.
same routine, but different challenges. Right. I think you
Yeah.
guys can agree with that, right? Every day is a different
Correct.
day, but the same routine. But, thank you for sharing that, Arpa. I mean, you really do touch on a lot of important points uh, that goes with caregiving. So that's good. How about you, Eva? I know you talked about the church,
Yeah.
and how that not being afraid and having the courage to reach out to them and ask for that help. Um, can you tell me how empowered you feel, even though you were scared?
Yes. The time when I took courage in speaking and approaching, I know that it was here in the US. Right? I still have that fear, but I made it. And other resources that I think that helped me was in, like, going into counseling because I was I was recommended to do counseling, and I said, "What? We don't have like this in the Philippines. We had when I was in high school that you go for the counselor, but not counseling." And
Yes.
then later on, as the days, months pass by, well, I appreciate it because I can talk. And then there was this assurance of the word called no judgment. Okay, talk and talk and talk, share. And there was this, as the years went by and the caregiving journey, chores become higher and intense and all of that. I hear the sharing of Allison and Arpa. So I
Mhm.
have this doctor's referral, doctor's appointment, talk to the doctor. In my mind, I don't mind if my language is different. I cannot say the right English or the right words. I have to
Mhm.
tell the doctor. So there was these resources for the doctor. And then there's this like webinar when the pandemic crisis arise. So I was introduced. I get to learn to know how Zoom meeting and webinar classes, continuing classes. So I just join. I just like, okay, I'll go and sit down and learn this. So it's educating, learning, because there's really such a need. I don't like to get behind because I'm so anxious of my husband's condition and health and the disease. It's really
Mhm.
um, overwhelming. It's so stressful. And then I'm becoming also sick, and I don't like it.
Mhm.
And aside from the doctor, the webinar, when I had this counseling and I have a family care navigator, then I feel relief. And then there was this respite, and I said, "Wow!" I said, "Good." You know, the feeling that you can have a caregiver to assist you in watching your loved one, even if it's not that uh, long, but the feeling of having being yourself and looking at the mirror of yourself. I said, "Oh my God, this is me now. I'm not like this." So it helps. And going out like by yourself, I know it could be like expensive sometimes because you have to buy yourself like that. I said, no, 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 no. There's always a battle of your mind that, oh, I feel
Mhm.
guilty because I should have be with my husband. Yeah, we used to go here, we used to eat here, but no. When I came back to the house, I said, oh, okay, then back to normal, back to the
Mhm.
caregiving. And
Mhm.
another thing is resources of like being referred to a
Right.
community, to like, okay, there are um, papers here, documents or links, read this, and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
those are very helpful and moving resources that I have.
Good.
And
So
I'm very
you would
grateful.
say the center, the Family Caregiver Support Center, has been a great asset for you, right? And having your family care navigator, navigating, and pretty much going through the journey with you, right? And helping you link yourself to other resources, being awarded the respite, and giving yourself a moment to be Eva, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
you get to know and have more friends. Like now, also
Mhm.
there's Allison, there's Arpa, and me. Of
Mhm.
course, you. I've known you, and Jenny, and I like really to give a good shout in you. that moves my life. I know there is really a challenge, but look at me now.
Yeah.
I've become more lovey.
That's good because now you're able to advocate not only for your loved one but advocate for yourself. And going through listening to all of you speak today, I mean, we've touched on a very important factor, which is mental health, as we talk and share, as you share your stories and your journey and how important mental health is. And I think you said counseling, and you were even surprised. You said counseling. I've never heard of counseling. I mean, like you mentioned, you go back and think about high school. That's something that, yeah, let's talk about your classes and what you need to take. But again, it goes back to, again, let's talk about you. And I think when we're caregiving, it does become isolating and becomes lonely at times. That again, we're left with our own thoughts, right? So sometimes we need to speak and share those thoughts with others, whether it's with a professional or maybe a friend or a fellow caregiver that understands what it is to be a caregiver. But yes, absolutely. And I like what you said. I'm looking in the mirror. This is who I am. And I think, and that's what happens sometimes. We fail to look at ourselves in the mirror and really see who we've become, not just the physical aspect, but who have we've become as we go through this journey. And I think caregiving, we can say, has changed you for the better. Even though as stressful as the journey might be and everything that you've done, I think caregiving alone changes you to become a better person. Why? Not only do you have great qualities of being loving and caring, but you've learned to be an advocate. Has made you a bigger person, right? And being able to speak up. So, we're before we get to the end of this, I would like to ask you all one more question, since we're on that subject of who you become and the challenges of caregiving, from physical to mental, the cultural shocks or challenges that we've come across, trying to learn how to navigate the system from insurance to how to get help at home, or how do I get a break? There's such a thing as getting a break and learning terms, right, from respite. And I tell clients, you know what respite is? And they're like, no. I'm like, it's a break. So I mean, just learning this terminology, right? You're like, I get a break? Absolutely, you get a break. I want you to share with other caregivers as you're in this panel, what has caregiving done for you? And I want you to think about it because we can say, like I mentioned, it changes you as a person. So, Allison, how do you think caregiving has changed you?
Oh, wow. I think it's made me extremely tough, and I was already tough. It makes you feel that you are doing great things and you're able to sort of, problem solve and all of those things. But it can also make you feel very demonstrative in all sorts of different other, I mean, so it's like you're constantly having to just redefine your days, just redefine what a successful day is. Maybe you didn't get out twice or three times today, and that doesn't make you a monster. Maybe you only yelled three times. Maybe you got into this huge fight in the middle of a shower with her, and afterwards you had the best time, and you had a dance party, and it's okay, and she's fine, and you're hysterically sobbing, and she's wondering, why are you still crying? Because it's, I mean, it has made me tough and tenacious in a way I can't even describe. And a lot of it I probably wouldn't give up, even though I just, I think there's just it's an enormous amount of change in your person, just in your whole everyday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
like
I would
that.
say
I wouldn't.
tough.
Yeah. Tough. I like that.
Yeah, that's
That's a
good.
good word. That's a good way to define yourself. And as any caregiver, really. Thank you for sharing that,
Good.
Allison. How about you, Arpa?
Caregiving makes me more responsible, flexible, understanding core values, and prioritizing. So,
Nice.
Yeah.
because I was I was 21 when we came here, so I was pretty young for,
Mhm.
but it it gives me to understand to, humans grow, become more mature, so it was
Mhm.
the best way. I don't know, like, because because so it's like it feels like when a person is from one place that used to live and then moves everything to another place, especially if it's from one continent to another continent, everything is a huge change. So it needs to get to I need to get used to that system, used to learn everything about how things work beside the language and culture. But it gives me this caregiving gives me the opportunity to become more mature and understand what was the meaning, I guess, what's the meaning of life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
I like what you
Yeah.
said, Arpa. Remember what I said? There's great qualities from caregiving, right? Besides being loving and
Mhm.
caring. I said, that's why I
Of course.
always say caregiving brings the best out of you. It might not seem like it at times, right? Like you said, like Allison had mentioned, you're screaming maybe out of the shower, or maybe you have those moments where you have the frustration hits. But at the end of the day, if you really sit and look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm tough, like Allison mentioned, and now you're saying I'm more
Mhm.
responsible. Look at all the qualities you just
Good.
added, and you were able to describe who you've become. It's like you almost grew out of this shell, right? And like I said, it's stressful
Correct.
and challenging, but as a caregiver, you already put yourself up to that challenge. And
Yes.
every day you're building on that and becoming even stronger and stronger. And in Allison's words, tenacious, right? It just makes you someone
Mhm.
just completely different, and
Yeah.
you have a different outlook in life, right? So, but you're good, Arpa. I'm glad that you're able to identify a lot of those qualities. That's great. I'm glad to hear that from you. How about you, Eva? What has caregiving brought
Uh,
out of you?
well, I'm glad to hear Alison and Arpa sharing, and I see a little bit of myself from what they shared. But on top of that, it really gives me a lot change, a huge in the sense that personality wise, I've I I'm I'm changed. I have changes. Um, I advocate deeply, seriously. My personality become like strong and vocal, and
Mhm.
I adapt the culture of the country, and I learned that we have to educate ourselves. You
Mhm.
have to like learn more, reach out, and I'm not afraid of talking and expressing myself and like fight the fear with faith and knowledge. And also that the mental health that I have, I feel like it's important, the self care
Mhm.
in this
Absolutely.
journey of caregiving and being an immigrant, though I'm not a immigrant anymore, but it, they still say that, yeah, You're immigrant. Everybody is immigrant in the US, either from the
Yes.
Philippines or other countries, you know. So, well, that's it.
Good.
And I say it gives me a lot being a caregiver, and with all this journey, the personality, the thinking, and the way that I am changes and help me to be who am I now.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Eva. So, one quick message that you can give to any caregivers out there, especially any immigrant caregiver, just a message and give them. Allison, is there a message you can give a fellow caregiver that's maybe starting in their journey or is in the middle of the journey, and again they're going through all these challenges as an immigrant? What will you share with them?
I would say to do it their way, to just to
Mhm.
sort of to think outside of the box, to think in no bounds. Every single situation is differently. I have had to advocate for her in ways that I never dreamt possible. I have had to
Mhm.
succumb we have had to be vulnerable in so many different situations and capacities. You kind of just have to be open to whatever you like, to sort of figure out what your needs are, or the person that you're caring for's needs, and to just kind of think in terms of the way they want their caregiving, like the whole experience to be. She's got one shot at this, is kind of, and
Mhm.
it's so it's there's 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 one shot, and I think that that's kind of, just to kind of not be so small in the thinking, like think in broader terms, and go out and get the resources, or go speak to somebody, or say what you need. um, in the pandemic, I mean, we've certainly had to speak up, and I felt like a triple whammy. I felt like I was dealing with prior losses. I felt like I was dealing with her impending loss in care, and then a pandemic. And so I felt like I had to ask for all of these special circumstances. Like, can you meet me at the door? I have a 98-year-old. She's not been out of the car. I feel like a broken record. I feel like she's almost 100. Like, I don't do this. We've not done this for 2 years. I mean, it's, I try to do it in the most gracious of way, but you do sort of feel very just out there. And I would say to somebody that's about to embark on the journey, or in the journey, to just do it their way, and to do it graciously, because it will it will be okay. Like, if you ask for what you want, even if it seems mightily unreasonable, or it's not something you're ever going to ask for again in your lifetime, but she's that one person has that one shot right then.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
That's good.
kind of how I've
That's
had to
good, Allison.
decision make.
Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Arpa? What can you
Uh,
share with a fellow caregiver?
I would say this sentence helps me a lot, even though I need it to remind me myself that there is a solution for every situation in a right
Mhm.
way. So don't ever feel hopeless or feel stuck. So that
Good.
would be.
I like that. Okay. Um, Thank you, Arpa. How about you, Eva? Anything you can say to a fellow immigrant caregiver?
Be strong, reach out, and ask some help, and
Good.
learn. Don't stop learning, and feel beautiful for yourself, you know, and be
Yes,
thankful and grateful. Just
mm,
ask and reach out.
that's
On
great.
top of Alison and Arpas, what they're saying, have faith and be grateful.
Yes. Thank you so much. Those are some great, kind words to say to fellow caregivers, especially in those times of need when we might feel hopeless. but there's hope.
Yeah.
Of course, and like many of you have said, you have reached out and you were with a family care navigator here with our Family Caregiver Support Center and got the help and support that you need and walked that journey with your family care navigator. So thank you all again. So, well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guests, Allison, Arpa, and Eva, for being so honest and sharing their stories with us and being able to hear from family caregivers who have shared backgrounds and experience helps others to really understand that they are not alone and how they feel and what they're going through. It gives inspiration and guidance to those of us who are struggling to know what others have gone through the same things and have overcome these obstacles. We hope that this panel has been able to illustrate the immigrant family caregiver experience that so many of us can relate to. Thank you for joining us today and for this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
Bye.
much, Giselle, Arpa, and Eva.
Right.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Alice.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Giselle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Giselle, for that informative panel. I also want to take a moment right now to thank our caregiver panelists for their willingness to share their thoughts in such an honest manner. Your courage to share about both your struggles and triumphs helps those of us who are watching to feel not so alone in our caregiving journeys. I want to tell you that you are an inspiration to us all. We hope that this discussion today helped to build your understanding about some of the unique challenges that immigrant family caregivers face. And even though we are focusing on a specific type of life experience today, I think we can all agree that some of these experiences are universal. We can all relate on some level to some of the things and stories that we've discussed today. So, being a family caregiver can often be very confusing and overwhelming. Sometimes you don't know where to start or what you need. And that's where we can help. The USC Family Caregiver Support Center is here for family caregivers just like yourself. Our goals are to educate you, connect you to resources, and support you through our caregiving journey. Please be sure to visit us at losangelescrc.usc.edu or visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn more and connect with our center. This discussion series will be available on our YouTube channel if you or someone you know wants to watch them on their own. If you came upon this video by chance, perhaps YouTube suggested it to you, and you want to learn more about our center, please also visit our website for more information. And if you've watched all the videos in this series and you still haven't signed up for our program, what are you waiting for? All you need to do is go to our website and click on that CareNav link on our homepage. Just remember that it's never too late to ask for help. Sometimes it's what you don't know that ends up hurting you. And so don't be shy about getting connected to one of our experts. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like it below. Also, make sure to click on that red subscribe button to subscribe to our YouTube channel and be notified every time we post a new educational video for the caregiving community. Take good care of yourself, and until next time, just remember that caregivers fight on.